Alright guys, so if you don't know who this guy is, he's basically a wanted fugitive because he tried setting the house of his ex-girlfriend with her baby on fire. He paid a hitman to throw a Molotov through the window, and he also paid a hitman to have an acid attack on his ex-girlfriend, and it's all exposed on YouTube. You can see her story on YouTube, and basically whenever someone tries to comment on Goatis' videos about it, he basically just blocks them so nobody can see their comments. He's basically also hiding his location. He used to always do live streams, and he's now like trying to hide the furniture and where he is in his videos so people can't find his location because he's wanted by the police. And yeah, basically this guy is somehow a big YouTuber. He's got 80,000 subscribers, and I like to call them slave scribers because you have to be, there's got to be something wrong with you if you think taking advice from this guy is a good idea. If you know the kind of stuff he preaches, like for example, on the previous channel he used to say that you should have sex with girls as soon as they hit their periods, which is, I don't know, like 12 or something. And he also promotes incest and eating raw meat, obviously, and staring at the sun. So yeah, and now he's somehow convinced that he's Jesus Christ now. I don't think if he's just joking or if he actually believes that. But yeah, I'm just going to review his video and expose him on his bullshit, and hopefully I'll help bring him to justice somehow. And yeah guys, there's some fucking noise in the background of the video. I don't know what that's from, so please try to ignore that. I don't know how to fucking fix it. Alright, here we go. Alright, so here's the guy who calls himself Jesus. Let's see what he has to say.
Hi, I'm gonna be reviewing a video called All Atheist Arguments Answered in 10 minutes. Before I start the video, I should make it clear that I am for sure not an atheist. I'm also not religious. I don't label myself in any way, but seeing as people want to put labels on other people nowadays.
Okay, so you call yourself Jesus and then say you're not religious.
You could call me agnostic, but I only say that because I don't...
You call yourself Jesus and then you call yourself agnostic. So if you're Jesus, you're saying you're not sure if you have a dad or not.
believe that we are supposed to understand anything beyond this reality in this human form. It's just how it's naturally supposed to be. I only care about nature and what we are naturally supposed to do.
Yes, he is very religious about nature.
Anything beyond that does not matter because it's not supposed to matter.
Atheists have a lot of arguments, but they never really think of anything new that the church hasn't had answers to for the past 2,000 years. So let's answer them. Religion causes wars. Well, actually, only 7% of all human wars were caused by religion, and if you remove Islamic wars, that number drops down to 3%. A lot of evil has been done in the name of religion. This is true, but the most murderous people in human history have been atheists.
This is why I'm just against religion. It's just, it causes wars and it's just not a good idea.
Doesn't mean religion is true.
I get what he's saying, but as I have explained in many videos, actually 99% of people on Earth are religious. They just call their religion something else. Even the scientific beliefs of today are actually religious beliefs, but that's a long topic. You would have to watch my other videos. My point is simply that they are for sure not non-religious people at all.
Just means you can't use that as an argument against it. If you were born somewhere else...
I think a lot of people disagree with you. I think a lot of people know they're not religious.
...else, you wouldn't be a Christian. Okay, and if you were born somewhere else, you wouldn't be an atheist.
Yes, but this is a very good point. This is what I always say. It perfectly proves to you that you only believe what the people around you believe. If you're born in a Christian country, especially back in the day, Christianity isn't really strong anymore, then you would be Christian. just because that's what you grow up believing, the same way
What do you mean Christianity is not strong? It's the number one biggest religion in the world, and the Bible is the number one most read book in the world.
people blindly believe in so-called science today, or whatever other religious beliefs they may have. Even the beliefs of good and bad are religious. There is no so-called universal good or bad, right
Yes, there is. It's in the Bible.
and wrong. There's just no examples of it whatsoever. Yet, at least over 90% of people on this earth
The actual Jesus is the perfect example. He lived a perfect life and never did anything wrong. So he's the perfect example of good.
believe in a good or bad, or right and wrong, which comes from God and the devil. Remove the D from devil, you have evil, and remove the O from good, you have God.
I actually didn't know that.
Religious beliefs. Naturally, there is no good and bad. It's just one example out of many that proves to you that people are very religious nowadays. And this influence of religions is almost everywhere still. They just don't call themselves religious. It doesn't change that they have very religious beliefs.
This is probably why this guy tried setting his ex-girlfriend's house on fire with the child still in it, because he doesn't believe it's a bad thing, because there is no bad. So hiring a hitman to do an acid attack on your ex-girlfriend is not bad, according to him. That's why he thinks he can just do what he wants and get away with it.
The overall point is that this point, that if you lived somewhere else or if you grew up somewhere else, that you wouldn't be part of this or that religion, is very good, because a lot of people probably believe that only Jesus Christ can save them. But then some tribes in the Amazon don't know Jesus Christ. They have never heard of him. And as we could see,
They're still gonna have to face Jesus Christ when they die, like everyone else, because he's the one who's gonna be judging everyone on the judgment day, according to the Bible. It won't be the Father, it won't be God, it'll be Jesus who'll be judging people.
see in the documentary, I'm going to link it again for the third or fourth time, even Christians who go to these tribes lose their religious beliefs because they realize that only depressed and lost people become religious. It's just not part of nature.
Everyone's beliefs are shaped by their context. How do you know which religion is true? Well, everyone, religious or not, has faith in a certain worldview. It's just that some worldviews are called religions and some are secular.
Yes, that's a good point for sure.
But everyone has to ask the question of which worldview best explains the world. There's no scientific...
Yes, exactly. And the only one that can possibly explain how this earth works is the so-called belief in nature. It's just nature. You look at what animals naturally do. You look at how nature reacts to
And who created the animals?
certain situations. The answer to everything in the end is only nature. There's just nothing else that you should believe in, worship, or anything. Everything always comes back to nature, and basically everybody in everyday life, whether they realize it or not, appeal to nature, which is...
This guy's hair is not even real, it's a wig. It's either a wig or a hair transplant. And whenever someone mentions it to him, he just ignores it. He just doesn't even bother replying. He just proper hides and tries to make people think it's his real hair.
The only thing that you can really
And that's not very natural, is it?
appeal to, because it's always correct.
that God exists. Well, by definition, science can only prove things inside the natural world, and by definition, God is something outside the natural world.
Yes, exactly. And this is also a very good point. It doesn't matter if there's no scientific proof for God, which there obviously can be. It only matters that in this actual realm which we are in, whatever you want to call it, the only thing that we could possibly see as God would be the sun. There just isn't anything else, which is why people always used to worship the sun. If you believe
So because of a bunch of people used to worship the sun, that's what makes it God. It's just a really bright circle in the sky. Why is it God?
that there's some creature or being or many beings outside of that, then it's just a religious belief. That's how you define.
Isn't it a religious belief to believe that the sun is God? You're just basically a sun worshipper, which is just cult. It's just your own religion.
Religious beliefs.
And like you mentioned, a lot of people say they're not religious but actually are. Well, this guy is worshipping the sun.
You can believe in that, believe in whatever you want, live your life however you want.
And this guy does actually stare at the sun all day long, just because he thinks he gets like wisdom from it. He thinks he gets some supernatural information from the sun, which is probably just demons.
As long as you realize that it's just an empty belief that cannot be proven. Which is why, again, when we go back to nature, it only matters what we can naturally sense, what's actually naturally really here, what we can actually go out, sense, and what is real. That's all that matters to every animal. No other animal believes in a so-called God. It's only humans who started believing in this because of other humans writing books, putting these man-made symbols into a book, and then others read these beliefs, and that's why they started believing in something that's outside of this natural earth. But to believe that, again, is just a blind belief. You just believe it. You can't.
People believe in God because God speaks to them. When they give their life to Jesus, they can finally start hearing from God. That's why they believe. It's not blind faith.
Prove it, and you cannot also disprove it because it's just a belief.
So science can neither prove nor disprove God. There's no evidence of anything supernatural. Well, that's just not accurate. There are medically documented cases of people with demonic possession speaking in languages they don't know, for example.
Speaking in languages they don't know, or talking gibberish. Which one?
Talking gibberish. No, I've actually spoken in tongues myself before.
Is it?
And people with near-death experiences getting information they never had access to.
I have no idea what he means, but near-death experiences, I've had a near-death experience myself, actually, as in I almost died. It's simple.
He almost died because he was staring at the sun for like a month straight without eating anything. And then they gave him some vegan food, and that's what made him ill, because he broke like a month-long fast or something. And he thinks veganism nearly killed him. That's why he's anti-vegan now.
Simply your brain lighting up, and then you have the visions which you would, depending on what you learned in your life. If you were religious, then you may see Jesus, or you may believe that you go to heaven or to hell. If you were not brought up religiously and were not exposed to the media, then you may see trees and the sky.
There are plenty of testimonies with atheists and Satanists saying they heard or saw Jesus.
It really just depends on what you were exposed to. People who were never exposed to religions don't have visions of Jesus, God, or whatever. It really just depends, because it's your brain having these visions.
I thought they'd be having visions of you if you're Jesus. I'd hope not.
The Bible has contradictions. Okay, you think you found an apparent contradiction that the church hasn't known about for 2,000 years? Every apparent contradiction can be explained by understanding just a little bit of theology. The Gospels were anonymous. Okay, anonymous doesn't mean we have no idea who wrote them. It just means the names of the authors aren't signed in the text itself. But we literally have writings from church fathers who knew the apostles and can verify that they indeed wrote the books named after them. The Gospels...
Nobody can confirm anything now. I get what he's saying, but it should be clearly understood that if you're reading anything from before you lived, or the people who wrote the book lived, that you're reading beliefs. When you read a history book, you have no idea if what you're reading is true. It could be completely false. You can read something about 100 years ago, and none of that may be true. It's possible.
Yeah, I think people have better things to do than making up history.
That should always be something that you keep in mind when you read anything historical.
Quote Jesus. Now, it's true that a lot of secular scholars think the Gospels are a mix of real quotes from the historical Jesus and fake quotes added by the church, but none of them can...
The only good quote from Jesus, from me, is there's no way around nature.
What? Where did you find that? I don't recall him saying that in the Bible.
That's it. Live your life understanding that, and you will succeed in life. That's all that you need to know. There is no way around nature.
God killed tons of people in the Bible. Well, it's actually way more than that. God numbers everyone's days. He's the giver of life, so he can take it, especially if people sin.
This is actually a very good point, because it's really just referring to nature. When you go against nature, then you're sinning, so to speak, and that's why nature will punish you. If you eat bad food as a woman, when you have a child inside of you, when you're pregnant, then the child will not be as well developed. And if the child eats bad
If you eat raw meat and drink blood, your baby will be healthy.
food once they are born, then they will have a malformed body, some kind of deformities, whatever the case. It will simply be nature punishing them. In this case, for being misinformed, brainwashed, for being weak, enslaved, for going against nature. Whether they realize it or not, it doesn't matter. In nature, it would be a punishment for being weak, a bad hunter. That's the only reason why you would not have access to good food. Whereas nowadays, technically, most people could be eating good food. They just don't get what they are supposed to eat.
Atheist countries are more prosperous. Yes, it's true that Northern European countries are very prosperous and very secular, but correlation doesn't equal causation.
That's of course true. Correlation never equals causation, but that's what all of the people in the scientific community want you to believe. These atheistic countries, I don't even want to start talking about them. Come on, really, are they prosperous? In what way?
Atheism causes prosperity. It's that prosperity causes atheism because when people have comfortable lives, they don't feel a need to depend on God. But why are these particular countries...
Only weak, lost, and depressed people need to depend on something that's not there. They need to believe in something.
Okay, so he's fully convinced that God is not there now, even though he claimed to be agnostic earlier.
Which they cannot sense. It's just bad on both sides.
so prosperous in the first place. They may be secular now, but they're rooted in generations and generations of Protestant Christianity. If you want an example of a country that's atheist and not rooted in Christianity, look at communist China. There's 4,000 gods that people believe in, and you're atheist to 3,999 of them. I just go one god further. Okay, this isn't the gotcha that you think it is, because the question of whether some sort of God exists is fundamentally different from the question of which religion is right about God. If God created everything, then who created God? Well, God is defined as the uncaused causer. Everyone knows there needs to be a first cause at the beginning of the chain of all events in the universe, and it makes a lot more sense for that first cause to be a personal God who caused things for a reason, rather than some random impersonal force. Science disproves God. Well, actually, the church...
This is something that a human being, as I said, cannot and is not supposed to understand. You can think about it as much as you want.
No, I'm pretty sure God wants to have relationship with humans.
It's best to really realize that you're just not supposed to understand this. You're gonna break your head, so to speak, trying to figure it out. It's just not gonna make sense to you.
Invented modern science. All the founders of the scientific revolution deeply believed in God, and medieval theologians laid the groundwork for modern science.
The Bible makes perfect sense to me. It's not going to make sense to you if you don't accept Jesus into your life. You'd be spiritually blind until you do.
Science by saying the world was governed by an intelligent creator. That means we can understand the world with our intelligence. And studying God led to studying the world because the world is God's creation. God is just used to fill in the gaps of things that science can't explain yet. Well, actually, God is the reason for everything, even things that science can't explain. It's not one or the other. It's not like everything's explained by either science or God, and the more science can explain, the less God can explain. Really, science can explain almost everything, but God is still behind it all, because science explains the how, and God explains the why. If God is good, why can't he destroy all evil? Well, he eventually will. Why can't he do...
That's funny.
No, it's not. Evil will be eventually destroyed along with this guy, probably.
Wait, let's see what else he says.
But now, because he'd have to destroy you. Why does God let any bad things happen? Because we deserve it.
We deserve bad things. Well, again, from nature's perspective, yes, because we are sinning. And if you're bad looking, for example, you deserve it in the sense that your ancestors were bad hunters, most likely, or enslaved, whatever the case. They ate bad food, and that's why they look bad. And that's why you also look bad, because you're just... your ancestors, you are them. Really, there's no difference. You are, of course, different. You have different genes, a combination of genes, but at the end of the day, it's that, and of course, you being malnourished as a child, which is, again, you going against nature. It just all goes back to you going against nature. I also have a video called...
There are plenty of healthy people who don't eat raw meat as a baby, who are living a healthy lifestyle and look good.
The fight against evil is a fight against nature, where I explain that people who fight against so-called evil today are actually fighting against nature without realizing it. It's just because you...
So he claims that evil is not real, and now he claims that anything that's not nature is evil.
grow up in a society where you don't understand anything about how nature works. You don't understand what evil actually is, because you don't live in nature. Otherwise you would realize that the so-called evil is something that you experience in everyday life in nature. It's just because you're so far away from it that you believe that it's something that should be destroyed. But if you want to destroy the so-called evil, then you would be destroying nature, which is exactly what our society is doing today.
No, evil is trying to set your baby on fire.
Animals don't sin, so why do they suffer? Well, the Bible says all things...
Animals do sin all the time, literally. Their life is completely sinful by Christianity's definition.
No, animals don't sin because they don't know right from wrong. So...
be restored. So if God is good, we can assume that they will be compensated. How do you know that God is...
Yeah, and this is exactly why it doesn't make sense. It's just the most illogical thing. It's the same for the people who grew up in a different country and have never heard of Jesus, or where it's forbidden to talk about Jesus, such as in North Korea, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. At least Christianity is not allowed there, the Bible. They will simply say, oh, they didn't know. It's okay, God understands that. Or if the animals are sinning, as I said, which they do every day all the time, then again, they will be compensated or whatever. They don't get married before intercourse. They don't sign some man-made paper or put on a man-made ring on somebody else's finger. It's just symbolic nonsense. Oh my God, man, yeah. Yeah, these people are so lost.
an evil instead? Well, because evil is not a thing the way good is. Just like cold is just a lack of heat, and dark is just a lack of light, evil is just a lack of good. And for good to be objective, it needs to come from God. So a God who is objective...
Yes, but if you believe in God, then God created nature. God created you the way you're supposed to be, and everything that you...
God did not create the fallen world we live in right now. He created nature, but nature is evil because we live in a fallen world, and God did not create that. It was not his original idea.
want and need in your life would then come from God, right? God creates this human being, and programs you with your needs and desires, and then you go after them because seeing as what you naturally want and desire has to be good. Otherwise, why would you want that? If it's something that's naturally inside of you, not something that you were programmed or brainwashed by somebody else to do. Purely naturally, if your intuition tells you to do something, then it would have to be good if it comes from God. But
So he's saying if you like doing something, then it's good. There are a lot of bad things that are for you, like hard drugs, for example, that make you feel good, but they're clearly not good for you.
most of this is seen as evil. It just makes absolutely zero sense.
Objectively evil is logically impossible. Can God make a rock he can't lift? Well, you're just asking if God can contradict himself, like can God lie, or can God change, or can God make another God? And the answer to all those things is no. God being all-powerful means he can do anything to things outside himself. It doesn't mean that he can do anything to himself or that he can contradict himself.
That's why there is only one God, because God can't create other gods. Because he wouldn't be God if he wasn't just the one true God.
Why did God let evil exist at all? So he could be glorified in defeating it. Triumph over evil is a greater good than evil.
That again doesn't make any sense. It's just way better for you to live in reality and realize
It is possible that God created, well, it is possible that God lets evil exist to test humans, and when evil will eventually be defeated, it'd be a lot better. Like, you wouldn't really know what heaven is without experiencing hell first, if you know what I mean. Which is basically this world we live in. It's a hellish world we live in.
that what you call evil is actually nature, and that you are the so-called evil one going against nature, and therefore also against God, by fighting nature and your natural needs. That's why I always said already 10 years ago that Christianity is Satanism, if there is such a thing, because you really, really go against your human nature.
Christianity is Satanism because we don't act like animals, according to this guy.
Every animal's nature and just nature in general. If there would be anything evil on this earth, then it would be anybody who goes against nature, because it destroys your health, your happiness, everything that you want in life.
Having just never existed. Religion is just wishful thinking. Well, if that were true, then the Bible wouldn't be all about how much we all suck. Psychology explains why you believe in God. So what? If God is real, we should expect there to be some psychological or social benefit to believing in him. Spiritual experiences can be explained by brain chemicals. Well, romantic experiences can also be explained by brain chemicals, but that doesn't mean your wife isn't real.
Yes, but that's a bad argument, because obviously your wife is real. I get his point, but it's one thing if your wife is actually standing in front of you, she's a real physical being, or if you have some kind of dreams, out-of-body experiences, simple imaginations, delusions, and then you believe.
This guy won't believe in God even if he would be standing right next to him.
That it's something else. If you cannot actually sense it, it's not in this reality, and your wife is in this reality, then it cannot be compared to that, because then it is wishful thinking. You just want to believe that it was a near-death experience, that you saw Jesus, you went to heaven or to hell, but it's not actually real, because it was in your brain, of course. You were actually dreaming.
So spiritual experiences being explained by brain chemicals doesn't mean that God isn't real.
There's not just dreams that... oh, whatever.
Well, drug trips show that spiritual experiences are from the brain. Well, people who have had both drug trips and near-death experiences say that they're completely different categories of feeling.
Okay, that's interesting. I haven't heard of this. Then again, everybody who's religious would probably say that, because they don't want to say that it's the same, but I would give somebody the benefit of the doubt. I would listen to them. It's an interesting topic.
The story of Jesus was copied from the story of Horus or some other ancient character. Okay, dude, that's a Reddit atheist-level myth. Even atheist scholars know that that's silly. Faith is the opposite of logic and reason. No, it's not. Faith just means trust. Anytime you eat food, you're having faith that it's not poisoned.
Yes, exactly. That's a good point. That's actually the first good point. It's not necessarily, for sure, not the opposite, so-called, of logic and reason. Yeah, it is a very deep trust. It can be called religious in the sense that it could be blind sort of trust, but his explanation is correct.
Even if
This guy must have a lot of faith in thinking the raw meat is not going to make him ill.
you can't scientifically prove it. If you're married, you have faith that your wife loves you, even if you can't scientifically prove that. And if
you can sense that. If you're worried about your wife not loving you, then she doesn't love you. Then you know already. Same with men, you know it. If you have doubts, then they don't love you. Come on. Just purely by the way they look at you, you already know.
tried to scientifically prove it, she'd probably get very mad at you because it would mean you didn't trust her. Evolution proved
you don't have to blindly trust that somebody loves you. You can just sense it yourself. There's no need for that.
God didn't create the
Yes, believers also sense God and that he loves us.
world. Well, not necessarily. God often works through natural processes in the Bible, and for all of church history, there have been prominent Christian theologians who have had a more metaphorical interpretation of Genesis, even well over 1,000 years before Darwin existed.
I have always found this evolution argument to be strange because even if it was true, even though there's no proof for it, why would it not be God who created the earth and created evolution? There's just no argument either way. It's both religious beliefs. Christianity and evolution are both religious beliefs. There's nothing that you can argue about because there's nothing that you can prove on both sides.
There's no evidence for Jesus outside the Bible. Well, that's not true. There's the ancient Jewish historian Josephus who wrote about Jesus, and he's one of the reasons why even secular scholars know Jesus historically existed. You really think God made billions of galaxies with billions of stars in each of them?
I think the only reason he's claiming to be Jesus now is to be classed as unfit for trial when he actually gets caught by the authorities for the evil he's done.
Just to have a personal relationship with you? Yes.
The ending was funny. It's typically what you expect from a video about Christianity. They will say that God created the earth. Of course, they cannot prove anything outside of this reality. We can only prove what we sense. That's all that we know. You cannot know anything that you read, that you see in a video. You can only believe it. That's why you can only believe historical events, whether it's religious stories about Jesus or any wars or anything else.
It's a religious story about you, apparently.
It doesn't matter what it is. Everything that you read is a belief. Only what you can actually sense is real and you actually know it. You don't need to believe it. I can go outside.
Like I said, a lot of people can sense God and the Holy Spirit.
And I can see the blue sky, the clouds. I can see when it rains because I see it, I sense it by the rain touching my skin, and so on. That's reality, and there is only one God in this reality. Everything beyond it, anything that you worship, is a blind belief, a religious belief. You simply need to believe in it, and then in your head, it will be true. That's how this works. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It also doesn't mean that it's right. It's just how beliefs work. That's why I don't base a lot on beliefs in my life. I base it on reality, which is nature. I sense how nature works. I sense how humans and other animals naturally react. And that's all that I need to know to explain this reality, which is what I mostly talk about in my videos. I don't need to read about it. I don't even like to read about it. I don't want to listen to other people's opinions. I don't want to read about other people's opinions or some kind of events.
Yes, because he thinks he's the enlightened one and he knows everything. That's why he claims to be Jesus now.
Sometimes here and there it can be somewhat interesting, but I don't base my life on it. I base my life on this exact reality which we are in, and nature controls this reality. And when you go against nature, you sin, you pay for it, you become more unhealthy and you become unhappy. And that's all that matters. That's why I only listen to nature. And I know.
So this guy is saying if you don't eat raw meat, you're sinning.
That only nature can make me happy and healthy. That's all that matters. Thanks for watching.
Because the only thing that's natural for him is eating raw meat. One more thing I want to mention is what the Bible actually says about there being people who claim to be Jesus. And this is actually from Jesus himself in Matthew 24:5. Jesus says, "Many will come in my name, saying, 'I am he,' and they will deceive many." So just as that guy is doing. So there we go, guys. It's proof that the Bible prophesied this. It's proof that it's God's word.